All right, we will get going in a moment. I know people are still coming in and settling, and I thank Richard for making my head enormous. Thank you. We have a lot of really, really great things to speak about tonight.
There's always a certain percentage that have trouble logging in.
And this is a new event for ALHI. We're trying a new format. So thank you everyone for participating. We will be happy to hear how it has gone and how you think we can do even better next time. But I think we're going to have a really great time tonight. And I want to check, are all of our presenters present? Richard, can you give me a thumbs up if everyone is here? Excellent.
Hello.
All right.
Can you hear me? Hi.
Hey everyone. Well, we're not on union time tonight, so I am going to suggest that we get going. As good practice, I'm going to ask that everyone please mute your microphones. And as people are speaking, please do unmute yourself. And when we get to the speaking portion later in the evening, I will ask that you use the reaction button at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand. And then I will be able to see who has something that they want to add or ask or jump in. So just a few ground rules. And also before we get going this evening, I would like to let everyone know that we are recording the event for use in different ALHI educational materials, potentially to be posted on our website. So if being recorded or having your face recorded is not something that you are super comfortable with, please do feel free to turn off your video camera at any time. You may also be able to change your name as it displays if you would like to put yourself as anonymous or only your first name, whatever you are most comfortable with. We are certainly not troubled by however you wish to display and express yourself. We're just very happy that you could join us this evening. So to begin our event tonight, honoring women in work, I think it is very important that we first acknowledge the land that we are gathering on, even in virtual space. So tonight we want to acknowledge that the Alberta Labour History Institute is on the ancestral territory of many Indigenous peoples that make up Treaties 6, 7, and 8. We pay respects to their elders past and present, and take a moment to consider the many legacies of displacement, dispossession, violence, and settlement, but also resistance and celebration that have occurred in the past and continue today. So welcome to our event tonight. I am Andrea Hazenbank. I will be your host and moderator for the evening. We are hoping this evening to introduce you to some of the benefits and exciting resources available through the Alberta Labour History Institute. I am Vice President of the organization, as well as an instructor at the University of Alberta. We are joined tonight by a wonderful collection of contributors, as well as board members and supporters in lots of different ways. So welcome to this cloud space. We hope that we have something that you will find interesting and engaging for about an hour or so this evening. So first, let me introduce our organization. Many of you have had a chance to work with us in the past, but if you have not, the Alberta Labour History Institute was founded in 1999. to give working people a chance to preserve their own stories in their own words. We are a group of trade unionists, community activists, archivists, and historians dedicated to the collection, preservation, and dissemination of the stories of Alberta's working people and their organizations. Oral history, mainly through videos, has always been the major form of research that ALHI undertakes. Our videos are available in our office, as well as at the Provincial Archives of Alberta, and we supplement that oral history with archival and library research. We are here tonight to show off some of our newer resources available on our website, where we post full transcripts of all the interviews, as well as short videos and podcasts of what we view as exemplary excerpts of the wonderful stories that people have to tell. We are very, very pleased to be able to share our work with the community through a number of different publications. We've convened conferences and workshops in the past. You may have seen our calendars hanging on the walls of your homes and workplaces. And tonight we are launching a brave new venture into webinars and web conferences. So we are a group of historians very excited to try being a part of the 21st century as well. So tonight's event is about honoring women and work. So we've decided to convene this event tonight, first to recognize International Women's Day from last week, as well as Women's History Month. And we want to do so by highlighting a new theme in the ALHI collection entitled Women and the Skilled Trades, Women in the Skilled Trades, excuse me. International Women's Day has its roots in the protests of working women for equal treatment and dignity. And today we see the great strides that women have made in every industry and aspect of public life. Many of these remarkable women have contributed incredible things to Alberta, to Edmonton, and to our communities. And as much as we hear the famous names of some 5 people, we also think it is very important to recognize other working women who don't often get their due. And ALHI is dedicated to finding these stories and having women tell these stories in their own words about the experiences that they've had. And so this evening, we're going to have a chance to hear from some of the contributors to this theme. We will have a chance to take a look at the resources available on the website, and hopefully we will have a chance to hear from you and engage in a little bit of question and answer discussion near the end of the event. So before we get into the main excitement, I would really like to recognize and give thanks to some of the people who've made this possible. So first, absolutely, I would like to thank all of those who have been interviewed and whose stories are on the website. The work that ALHI does is focused on these stories, and we would not exist and we would not have events to run if so many people weren't so generous in sharing their time and telling us about their working lives. I want to thank as well the participants who will be speaking tonight, and I'll have a chance to introduce them in a moment. I would like to thank the sisters of Build Together, who have collaborated in organizing and conducting many of the interviews on the Women in Skilled Trades theme that you will see. And as well, I would like to thank all of the many volunteers with ALHI, the web designers, and Richard Wood, who is helping facilitate the technical aspects of what we're doing this evening. I am so proud to work with an organization that is so focused on really doing decentralized work with as many people as possible, mostly out of the time and energy that they have to contribute. So thank you very much to everyone. So this evening, we have a bunch of wonderful people who are going to be speaking to us about their experiences as women working in skilled trades, in healthcare, in transit, and as participants in the labor movement. They have moving stories to tell about the challenges they have faced, about gaining experience, and about the pride they take in their work. They describe the difficulties of not being accepted by coworkers and of repeatedly having to prove themselves and to continue knocking at walls and ceilings in their way. Indigenous women and racialized women describe the intersectional experiences of discrimination that they have faced. And there are discussions about challenges, including working safely during pregnancy, access to maternity leave, arranging for childcare, and just living as a world in a space that is not always designed for women. So our speakers tonight are going to give us, I think, a set of very different experiences and stories, all of which have quite a lot to tell us. So we will have a chance to hear from them in turn, but I am very pleased tonight to welcome Siobhan Mangal, Linda Robinson, Angela Gramboise, Angela Fiddler, Karen Craik, and Lisa Andrews. So in turn, each of our guests will be having a chance to speak for about 5 minutes or so, but we're not going to be harsh about how long women take to tell their stories. This is a night where you're going to hear a lot of women talking, and it's a celebration of such things. So I am excited to invite our first speaker, Siobhan Mangal, to tell us about her experiences. Siobhan is an apprentice in the, just 1 second, here we go, here's Siobhan. She is an apprentice in the Operative Plasterers and Cement Masons International Association, Local 222, and with the Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers, Local 110, and a member of Build Together, Women of the Building Trades. Thank you very much, Siobhan, for joining us, and I'm going to throw it over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Like she said, my name's Siobhan Mangal. I just want to thank Robin Chapman, Joanne Combs, and the ALHI crew for arranging the interviews and editing countless hours of footage to show our truest selves. Without this relationship and project, our stories would have only become our memories, no knowledge gained, and no wisdom passed on. Build Together, Women of the Building Trades is a group of strong-minded, admirable, hardworking, unionized women that share a common goal. We want to see change, whether it be extended childcare hours to fit schedules of working mothers, to proper PPE that fit us on site. We want to have suicide prevention training readily available to assist our coworkers if ever need be. Build Together is about sharing our experiences to help each other out. We thrive on inclusiveness and diversity, and this is why Women in the Skilled Trades project between ALHI and Build Together is so crucial. It is a log to see the development that we must endure in order for our future to succeed. The interviews that Joanne and the ALHI crew put together were just wonderful, weren't they? I had such a great experience with her crew, feeling cared for, and that my experiences in the trades mattered. I feel as though I am a lucky one, a visible minority, a female in 2 different trades, in 2 different male-dominated trades, and almost nothing but good things to say. Was it gut-wrenching at first? Yes. Was it challenging day after day? Yes. Did it test me mentally and physically? Heck yes. Do I regret my decision switching from my 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 3-week paid vacation? Not at all. For me, the trades is a constant change, a constant push to do better than the day before, and always having the nerves in my stomach, thinking, what will my next challenge be? Knowing with full confidence that I will succeed because of the support I've received from Build Together, my union, and my employer. I started off as a fireproofer, which applies fire-resistant product onto stainless steel beams, usually used on industrial sites. After 3 years with Local 222, I joined the Heat and Frost Allied Workers, Local 110, as an apprentice insulator. Insulation, which is where you apply a product around piping, so that whatever's in the piping stays at the temperature it's needed to be. I went to NATE right away, and I advanced to my second year apprenticeship. I took work as soon as possible, and the company I got on with was Aluma Safway. They have kept me working for the majority of the last 2.5 years, and they also advanced my qualifications by putting me through a rope access course. It is 4 days of vigorous physical training, followed by 1 day of an assessment. And after 1,000 hours, you're able to advance to your level 2, which includes rigging the job with a level 3 present. You're able to perform rescues if needed to be. You just kind of get a little bit more responsibilities added on compared to level 1, where level 1 is you're just learning how to properly climb and do the maneuvers. So After the 1,000 hours of rope experience, I was able to level up through my company again. And I just recently received my level 2 rope access course. So rope access is used in difficult locations to get to. Sometimes scaffolding is impossible, so they use rope access as an alternative. If you've ever seen window washers on high-rise buildings, that's a type of rope access, except for my job specific, I do it in an industrial setting since I'm at the Syncrude site, which is basically a climber's playground. You have multiple tie-off points and lots of things you can climb over. We have pipe racks that we can go and hide in and no one will ever be able to see you, which makes it hard for safety on site to access you if you do happen to have an incident. So we're very reliable on each other. If something does happen, it's our brothers or sisters that are getting us out of that situation before safety or rescue team can come and get you. So with rope access in an industrial setting, I've been having a blast working for the last 5.5 years, and I enjoy going to work and the people that I work with. But with all the highs, there's bound to be a few lows. Sometimes as a female in the trade, you get unwanted comments as smile more, or you're too pretty to be in the trades. You get stared at all too real. You're constantly having to prove that you're capable of doing something. And you often hear the really, you actually got it done, which I think they try to say as a compliment, but sometimes it just is more defeating than anything. Which is why we need to normalize that anyone and everyone can work a labor-intensive skilled trade. I am a third-year apprentice fireproofer. I'm a third-year apprentice insulator that is going for my journeyman this following winter. I'm a level 2 rope technician with goals of becoming a level 3 rope technician, and I'm a Build Together representative. And now I am a member in the ALHI archive. And I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to my story. And over to you, Andrea.
Thanks, Siobhan. That was fantastic. It's great to hear not only the progress you've made, it is not great to hear the challenges that are still there, but I'm so glad you're able to be with us tonight and talk a little more about it. And hopefully we'll get a chance to hear a bit more later on. Next, I am going to ask Donna Coombs-Montrose to take on our next introduction.
It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Linda Robinson. Linda, what an awesome person you are. Linda is a champion for Indigenous and labor rights and is a strong supporter of the NDP. She has worked for the Alberta Federation of Labor for many years. Now you look at Linda and you hear her story and I just marvel at who she is. Linda was raised in foster care. She's a polio survivor. She was in foster care from the age of 2 years old. She's a polio survivor. She holds a degree from Athabasca University. She's a grandmother and soon to be great-grandmother. And Linda has been a provincial and national representative of wheelchair basketball. She still found the time to play sport. And she's also currently a curler. So before I get carried away, I'd like to turn it over to Linda to tell her own story.
Well, thank you for that great introduction, Donna. And I'm going to change the perspective a little bit here. And instead of talking about my story, I want to talk about the history of Indigenous relations in Canada. So prior to the creation of Canada as we see today, Indigenous people were enjoying 100% of the landmass. Indigenous people ended up with only 0.2% of their original landmass. This quite simply was the biggest land theft in the history of mankind. This massive land dispossession and resultant dependency is not only a humiliation and an instant impoverishment, it has devastated our social, political, economic, cultural, and spiritual life. We continue to pay for it every day in grinding poverty, broken social relationships, and too often in life-ending despair. But that was always part of the plan. We were left isolated and hungry while our land generated fabulous revenues from the lumber, minerals, oil and gas, and agricultural produce. We were to be kept penned into our 0.2% reserves until we were starved out and drifted onto Skid Row in the city and gradually disappeared as peoples. The Indian Act was the original termination plan adopted by the Canadian Parliament over 150 years ago to break up Indigenous nations into bands, setting Indian reserves apart, keeping a registry of Indians until assimilation is complete as individual Indians within the meaning of the Indian Act, and Indian bands respectively became a collection of the Canadian citizens living within municipalities without any legal distinctions from their general Canadian population. They would become Indigenous Canadians, an ethnic group among others in the Canadian mosaic, without any more rights or standings than Italian Canadians or Ukrainian Canadians. Elimination of Indigenous nations as a distinct political and social entity was the ultimate objective of Indian policy. In a 1920 speech to the Special Committee of the House of Commons, Deputy Superintendent General Duncan Campbell Scott said bluntly, "I want to get rid of the Indian problem. I do not think, as a matter of fact, that this country ought to be continuously protect a class of people who are able to stand alone. Our objective is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic, and there is no Indian question and no Indian department." In 1969, about 100 years after the Indian Act was adopted, Liberal Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau and his Minister of Indian Affairs, Jean Chrétien, believed assimilation of Indians had largely been completed and introduced a white paper on Indian policy to argue that special Indian rights were the problem and equality under the law was the solution. Fast forward 50 years, and today we continue to face removal from our lands. The current Prime Minister continues to work with his father with his 2019 version of the 1969 White Paper. It calls for the elimination of existing legal and political distinctions and status by forcing original Indigenous communities and nations to sign modern termination agreements and changing Indigenous people into ethnic minorities. The pattern continues with the same expectation, removal from our lands. Whenever Canada has a chance to depart from its brutal colonial past in First Nations, it automatically lapses into bad habits. A prime example is with the Wet'suwet'en. Recently, the RCMP and the Canadian state came to a moral crossroads on a snowy country road and looked briefly down the path of reconciliation. Then they said, "F it." A highly militarized police presence once again used force against Wet'suwet'en protesters, blocking the construction of a $6.6 billion methane pipeline. In doing so, the police made a mockery of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. The declaration expects that conflicts like this will not be resolved violently or militarily, but with negotiated solutions. The document directs us to do peaceful, negotiated solutions that respect everybody's rights. The hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en Nation are not asking for much. They want Indigenous rights and the title respected and acknowledged by the BC and Canadian governments. Canadians need to start asking hard questions about the needs, what needs to be done once we're aware of the Indigenous presence. It requires that Canadians remain uncomfortable, and it means making concrete, disruptive change. How can you be in good relations with Indigenous peoples, with non-human beings, with the land and water? I think we need to start imagining a collection of relationships that must be entered to simply beyond things like land acknowledgements. Canadians need to remember that inherent rights come from the Creator, not from Canada. That treaties are forever, that treaties are international, that treaties are with Great Britain, not Canada, that there is no more genocide, and no to White Paper 2.0. We are honored to share what Creator of all things has loaned to all nations and humbly acknowledge that we are all related. We honor the terms of the treaty in perpetuity when we declare peace and friends, as long as the sun shines, water flows, and the grass grows. All my relations, hi hi.
Thank you, Linda. I am so glad that you had these words to share with us tonight. I think it's important to remember that any of the work that we're doing is on the lands of our Indigenous people, of the Indigenous people, of these lands first. And these are relationships that should be sustaining us while we look at all of the work that we do. So I deeply appreciate those words. I'm going to ask Linda to jump back in and introduce our next speaker as well.
Okay, so I'm pleased to introduce Angela Gramboise, who was born and raised in Edmonton and currently is residing in Andrew, Alberta with her spouse and 3-year-old daughter. Angela is a Denny Albertan with over 14 years of experience as a pipe fitter, steam fitter with the Plumber and Pipe Fitters Local 488. A proud journey person, her Indigenous community and heritage was the foundation of her resilience and determination to overcome racial barriers in the workplace. Angela promotes safe working conditions and takes every opportunity to train in new areas. She always promotes her profession. She is a role model for her community and family and influences others to seek the profession in the trades. Angela lost her mother when she was 16 and her older sister when she was 29, but she says that her enjoyment of mountain climbing helps keep her centered. She aspires to work towards becoming a plant operator. Angela, over to you.
Hi, I'm Angela Gramboise, a member of Local 488. Been a member for 14 years, like she said. And I'm from Coal Lake First Nation. And I got into the trades because somebody said it was the biggest challenge there is to, and I like a big challenge, like she said, mountain climbing and physical stuff. That's what I really enjoy doing. And it was definitely a challenge, working hard, just trying to prove myself. Every single job I go to was trying to prove myself. But I got through, and I just wanted to be a role model for other women entering the trades and let them know it's not as scary as it's thought to be to enter into the trades. And yeah, I just want people to know, like, as long as you work hard, you keep safe, you keep your brother and sister safe on the job, and just at the end of the day, you go home and you look back at your accomplishments and be a better person for it. And thank you for letting me be a part of this. I appreciate it.
Oh, pause. Thank you, Angela. I love that the greatest challenge is the one you should throw yourself into. I love that approach. Linda is going to jump back in and introduce our next speaker as well.
Hey, we have another great opportunity for me to introduce our next speaker. Angela Fiddler is a member of the Waterhen Lake Cree Nation. Angela is a working mother of 6 who proudly sees her oldest children attending university and the youngest attending high school. She enjoys watching her children play hockey, soccer, and fastball when she is off the work site. She has worked within Fort McMurray area at the Wassapoo Creek Lodge with Seville since October 2010 in the hospitality and accommodation workforce. Angela feels the opportunity to work within the energy sector has given her a strong sense of accomplishment and ability to learn about the growing energy sector, which she knows offers a strong opportunity for First Nations people for employment and procurement opportunities. Angela is active in her union, UFCW, and has fought for the rights of Indigenous workers as a member of UFCW's negotiating team. Thank you, Angela.
Dansa, I'm Angela Fiddler. I, as She introduced me. I'm from Waterhen Lake Cree Nation, which is in northern Saskatchewan. I have been working up at Wapasu Creek Lodge for almost 11 years now. So I guess how I began advocating for our Indigenous rights is going through struggles there as an Indigenous worker. I believe one of the biggest struggles is the lack of understanding that people have for Indigenous people. They don't understand where we're coming from. They don't know our struggles. They don't understand why many of us quit work or have a hard time, coming to work, different struggles like that. There's a lot of systemic racism that is not only in the labor field, but also within Canada. One of the stories I had wanted to tell you just briefly is how when I started was one of my coworkers, Indigenous coworkers, he was smudging in his room, practicing his spirituality. And once the managers found out that he was doing this in his room at camp, they said they were going to fire him if he did it one more time. They brought him in the office and they issued him a written discipline. So when I heard about that and we discussed it, and I said, there has to be a way out of this. I know that, that's against the law. We have human rights. But at the same time, way back then, I was uneducated and I didn't really quite know a lot as well because, going through the residential school era and everything like that, I was a bit colonized. But since then, I've really dug deep and I've spoken to elders, I've listened, I've been taught a lot to understand where I come from and where we come from as Indigenous people. So you really need to know who you are in order to make these changes within your company or corporation. I figure that the basic human right of spirituality and your language is very important because that's who you are as an Indigenous person. When you go through residential school and even working in a non-Indigenous company or corporation like I was, you really lose yourself because you have to become colonized. The struggles are real. And as an Indigenous woman, it's even more difficult to become successful in a large corporation or a large company, being away from home. I remember every month I used to say, okay, Angela, you're gonna, let's do this one more month. And so one more month turned into almost 11 years. So I'm really grateful for that, to pep talk my way and to listen to my elders. Come on, they say, don't quit. And so I listened to them. I just kept going. And through the struggles, I've learned to deal with a lot of issues, and utilizing my union having my back in a lot of this and everything that I needed to do to make changes at camp. So every baby step I took out at camp, I needed to explain why like the managers were, they weren't very understanding. They didn't understand Indigenous workers at all, or Indigenous people, where we've come from. One of the managers had told me before, when I went into his office to explain why we needed something, or why we needed a culture room, or why we needed like a teepee or somewhere for my coworkers to be able to smudge and take part in their spirituality. I always had to explain every single detail to them. One of the managers had told me that he puts roadblocks in my way, specifically for me to struggle, so that we wouldn't be successful in the workplace. I've had another HR say to me that I would never be nothing but a kitchen worker or a housekeeper, and that I would never be able to make it up in the company or to move up within the company. I've also had co-workers say, you know, this camp is going to go to shit now that Indigenous workers are here, that we're going to be so, with this, you know, that the camp was going to be so dirty and filthy because we were there now working. They've also said we should pay for our own drug tests or fitness tests because we all fail them, which isn't true. You know, that there's a lot, we have Indigenous workers out there that we have to take drug tests and everything in order to work, and we pass them. So not everybody has issues with drugs and alcohol. We've also had issues where one of my coworkers kept trying to become a Red Seal chef, but his paperwork was always lost, or they always gave him the runaround. They didn't give him that opportunity to move up, to become in a position where he's a chef in the kitchen. And so you see these the racism and discrimination there within the work site, and it still is there. But I've learned to deal with the issues. I've educated myself. I've had mentors in the union. One of my late walking shop stewards used to tell me, Angela, you need to toughen up. Come on. And so I would be crying, but this and this, you know? Which is, you know, because I was always such a crybaby right in the beginning. And it was like, because it was such a struggle for me as an Indigenous person and working out in Alberta, and I was from Saskatchewan, so I was far away, but I knew I had to do it right for my children. So I did toughen up, and I'm thankful that I did, because I'm still there. So one of the, you know, I think what we need to focus on is understanding the issues of why Indigenous people or workers have a hard time in the work field. You know, you have to get to the root problems of it in order to understand and in order to create changes. A lot of us go through residential, or had went through residential school. It wasn't too long ago, because I was one of the last students to attend residential school back in 1990. We need to band together. So if everybody was to come and support Indigenous people and their rights, they're going to help us to become more successful in the labor force. We need to make these changes. So even though, you know, we're speaking out, we need help. We need help to make these changes in order for, you know, the future generations that are coming into the workforce. We need to create awareness. We need to negotiate within our contracts, every single contract that we are in our locals, in when the contracts is where we need to make these changes because of the policies, because they won't make any changes unless it's there within the contract, and then they're forced to make these changes. We also need to celebrate. A lot of non-Indigenous leaders don't want us to be successful. They don't want us to celebrate. It's like we're always having to try and validate who we are as people. So if you celebrate with us on our National Indigenous Day celebrations, you're also embracing us and helping us to be successful in anything that we do. My story is online, and you can, listen to it, take the time and listen to it. And don't mind me crying, because that was back in the day when I was a crybaby. I wasn't very strong. Oh, I was strong, but I think I was dealing with a lot of issues myself. Right now, I'm happy to say that I am sitting on the national subcommittee for National Canada, the Indigenous Subcommittee, helping to create change within Canada through the UFCW. And I take part in a lot of, education and classes, and anywhere I can learn from my elders and my other coworkers and stuff. That's where I am right now, and creating change. And I'm still there, and I'm hoping to be able to create a lot more change, not just within our negotiations within our company, but also within Canada. And thank you for listening. And I really hope that you stand with us. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you, Angela. And I really thank you for reminding us how much decolonization has to be the work of the labor movement. If we're going to uplift women, if we're going to uplift Indigenous women and workers, they're not separate fights. They're all the same fight. And I think your story helps us remember that. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Karen Craik. Karen Craik is the Secretary Treasurer of the United Nurses of Alberta, a position she has held since 1996. She has a long history with UNA, from their founding in 1977 to the present day, protecting nurses' rights and our healthcare system. And I think we feel deeply how important that is right now. So over to you, Karen.
Well, thank you for this. And I think this is a great opportunity. I just want to say first off that I am a woman, white, and of privilege. I do not have the experiences that the Indigenous and other people have had. Those that have been looked at minority. I'm blue-eyed, white-skinned. But I am proud to have been a woman when unions were not part of women's work. I grew up with the union. I only knew of UNA when I was a nursing student. UNA was formed in 1977, and I was in my first year of nursing. And then so I didn't know about the union. In my family, we didn't talk about union. My father was an engineer. My mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. So unions were foreign to me. And then as a first-year nursing student, I worked between nursing years, and not all hospitals went out at that time. There were only a few when the union was formed. And I still didn't know anything, except I worked at the Grace, and we were the baby central because the Holy Cross and the General were closed down for baby deliveries. But I thought, well, this is an interesting concept. So I graduated in 1978, and then soon after that, I actually went down to the United States to work. My husband, he was working in the United States. And I had the experience with the healthcare in the United States. Before I left to the United States, I always believed in public health care. That was my passion. I think from when I was a child, I thought that healthcare was a right and not have to be paid for. So when I was in the United States, my mother would send me articles. They had a strike in 1980, the United Nurses of Alberta. And that point in time, 1980, nurses finally got up to a double digit. We got $10 an hour. And when I was in the United States, I started talking union. And people said, you can't talk union because you're going to get fired. I said, no, because as I recall from Canada, if you have a union, you can't get fired because you're in a union. That didn't come to be because still to this day, there aren't that many unions in the United States for the nurses. And then I had my child came back to Canada in 1981 in November, baby in hand, and January, I was on strike. I didn't know what the issues were necessarily, but there had been a strike vote. So January 1st, we were on strike. So 1982, we were on strike. And it was then that I had an aha moment because I was a young mother, I was a youth and still trying to get my legs on the ground coming back to Canada. Like, what are we going on strike for? Because I hadn't been there for some of the discussion. But then I heard, it's about wages. And a lot of it in 1982 was about professional responsibility and occupational health and safety. And I think that the government took women for granted. And because nursing was supposed to be a convocation, not an occupation. So we were supposed to be working, for minimum wage and not necessarily looking after ourselves. But in 1982, there was sort of the uprising. You can join professional responsibility to look after public health care, look after your patients, and look after yourself. So I just thought, well, this is a great thing. So I was hooked, and I knew that the majority of the people voted to go on strike. And then a reporter came up and said to me when I was on the picket line, said, well, why are you on strike? And I said, well, the majority came in to speak. And the majority voted to go on strike so that we could look after our patients and we can look after ourselves. And that was it for me. I was all about the union. So I really became engaged in the union and try not to make this too long. But as a woman, I was so impressed that women could have a vote and that women could speak up, because you never heard of women's unions. But at that point in time, all across Canada, nurses' unions were coming to be. And to have that context that us as nurses and putting women's issues forward, as well as looking after patients, it was a great opportunity to start speaking about unions. And so we did it, and looking after ourselves, looking after each other. And then there was a period of time where we didn't have strikes, but then in 1988, again, there was a period of time where we were looking to each other. And 1988 was a really turning point. I mean, 1982, we were actually told to go back to work, and we didn't. There was the voice of the union, and it was women that we didn't go back to work. So they started to put fines in Alberta that, okay, if you don't go back to work, you're going to get fined. 1988, when we went out on strike, it was illegal. But at that point in time too, and again, for women's rights, when they were telling us that we couldn't even vote, yes or no, to go out on strike, that was the government's mistake. We had rollbacks at the bargaining table. It was about benefits and maintaining what we had. It wasn't a huge rollback, but it was about maintaining what we had achieved in 1982, 1984, 1986 that we sort of maintained. But they came back saying that we couldn't have short-term disability. They were going to look at our benefits. But when they said to a group of women, no, you cannot vote, like to go on strike, or you'll be penalized. I was so proud to go and vote, yes, I will go out on strike. It was a big turning point for the union. We went out on strike. We had the highest voter turnout, and we had the highest number of locals voting. And that was a great thing. But again, because we did that, labor laws were changed in Alberta because of that, because a group of women defied the government. And I am proud to be a woman and part of that history. So again, when we went out, we were illegal. And we had a couple of hospitals at the time that went out for the first time. In Calgary, the Foothills Hospital and the Alberta Children's Hospital, they were crown hospitals in other strikes in 1982, for example. In 1988, they were the first time that they went out on strike with us. So the government tried to come after us again and say, well, the crown hospitals, we're going to have an injunction. You cannot picket at the Foothills Hospital and you cannot picket at the Children's. And I was on the executive board at this time. So we had information meetings and we gave information, and I was proud to give that information and say, okay, so if we have been told we have injunctions against the Foothills and the Children's, we cannot picket at those hospitals. And again, as a leader in the organization, and it was the grassroots, and I was part of the grassroots. And we just all said, no, you can't tell us that we can't picket at those places. So that was the highlight of the strike in 1988 for me. We had 2,000 nurses show up at the Foothills Hospital at 6 o'clock in the morning, picketing around the Foothills, and then going directly to the Children's Hospital and picketing there. We had many, many fines in 1988. But still, I would never, ever give that up, because we were standing up for our rights. We were standing up for our union. And UNA at that point in time didn't have money. And it was the labor organization and being part of the labor community that made us survive the 1988 strike. We had members that were going into work, like for example, at Foothills Hospital. They were going in because we had determined as nurses, because of our professional responsibility and our code of ethics, we set up essential services even before all this essential service legislation that they're putting on us now. But we had determined that the NICU at Foothills would stay open because it was a level 3 NICU. So we had nurses going in there. And then because they could name the nurses that were going into work, they fined the nurses that were going and working, that we had given approval for them to go in and cross the picket line, because we as nurses were part of that. And wanting to look after patients and all the essential services. So we had court challenges, we had individual fines, and they could fine the people because they were the ones going into work. But again, because we stood up to the government, and I was proud to be part of that, we said, be damned. So they were ordering us back to work. So we had a contempt of court to go back. We refused to go back. And then we had a criminal contempt of court. So they fined us twice for the same thing. And to this day, like United Nurses of Alberta, and I'm proud to say, as one of the board members at the time, that, we have like the largest fine across Canada for that. You know, we had $450,000 at that point in time. And our lawyers were fighting criminal contempt. But it was because we as a union began to appreciate the labor movement when we were first a union on our own. Okay, we didn't have money. Our fines were paid by other unions. And then so it was great to be part of a bigger labor community. And I was proud to be part of when men in unions, in trades, were coming up to us and saying, you know, it's great. It's the women that came out and went on strike. And we did. I mean, we led the way. And a lot of the regressive labor laws in Alberta to this day are because of United Nurses of Alberta. And I am so proud to have been part of that. And at the time, being involved in the union wasn't easy. I was, like I said, I grew up in the union. I was 25 when they became active. And I had a child, and looking at, you know, to balance that. But the union was in my heart. I believed in the union, and I wanted women to be proud. And I wanted my daughter, if she ever grew up, that she could be proud and go to a workplace that looked up for health and safety, professional responsibility if she went into nursing. But who knew? She faints at the sight of blood. Not my kid. But to this day, I am just so proud to be part of United Nurses of Alberta and a group of women. And women have brought forward wages. Nurses unions have brought forward wages, not only within healthcare, but other women's wages. We looked after benefits. We had challenges that went out about maternity leave, the sub-plans for maternity leave, and even challenging a retirement age at age 65. And I was part of that. And it was me from being the grassroots. I was always at the bedside for 21 years, full-time. I've always worked full-time, and I believe that women should be working full-time. But as women, like even in our union today, we have more part-time women because of family obligations. But women should never be penalized because they choose family. And then so we still have to strive to this day. You know, when people think, what's the relevance of unions right now? And I believe unions are still relevant. We fight for pensions today, and we should fight for pensions in the future. And we should fight for women's rights. And whatever a group of women can do to forward other women's groups, that's the best we can do. And I'm proud to have been part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for telling us what it's like to experience how powerful women's leadership can be, and what women bring to the labor movement is incredibly important. And I think we are about to see how important unions are in this province. I think the fight is going to need all of the support it can get. I will introduce our next speaker in just a moment, but I do want to acknowledge all of the wonderful comments and support coming in the chat for our speakers. Thank you very much. Please do keep that coming. And we will do our best to make sure that everyone gets the recognition at the end. I am now going to invite our last speaker for the evening, Lisa Andrews. Lisa is a transit instructor with the Edmonton Transit Service and a member of ATU Local 569. Her mother, Kathleen Andrews, was the first woman transit operator for ETS. And Lisa has been absolutely instrumental in getting some of that recognized. I'm going to hand it over to you, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Yeah, just to talk a little bit about my mom. Yeah, she started transit in 1973. as a call operator. She was actually a divorcee. She got divorced in 1970, which was basically a taboo thing to do. Because she was a divorcee, our house would be vandalized. We had to get a German Shepherd. We would be bugged as kids at school because you wouldn't, being a divorcee in the 70s was just something that you didn't do. It even got to the point that, you know, when my dad had left her and she had to raise us two kids, she applied for a loan at the bank, and the banks actually refused a loan to her because she was a divorcee. So she set out into the working world and she got a job with TS in the call and the complaints department. And in 1975, they relaxed the rules, the height and the strength requirements to become an ETS driver. And at that time, she was struggling, trying to feed us two and, you know, have a house, you know, as a single mom. And so she asked the branch manager if she could apply for the job. And he said, go for it. Sure, if you want to. And then the trials started with her. She had the courage to do that, but when it came to the ETS, and because it was all men, they did not want women in the workplace at all. They refused to train her. Most men just turned their back because at the time there weren't formal instructors to train her. She would just go for runs with other bus drivers. She's told me one story that when she walked into the operator's lounge, all the men turned their backs on her and they refused to train her because they did not want a woman in the workplace. They did not want that change. She also had challenges because there were no bathrooms for women. They were all for men. So she went through that and she worked her hardest, you know, to do the job and to help raise these kids. And one story I'll tell you guys about one night she was driving, I don't know if you guys remember, but she was driving the old trolleys back in the 70s, and a woman boarded her bus and looked her up and down and said to her, if you knew what was best for your children, you'd be at home looking after them and not taking a job from a man. So my mom, being a polite, you know, British immigrant, because she was from Britain, looked at this woman and said, you know, I do know what's best for my children. That's why I'm sitting in this seat, busting my butt so that I can provide them, you know, a roof over their heads and, you know, food on the table. I don't know how she won that woman over, but, you know, with those late nights, that same woman passenger would meet her on the routes and bring her hot coffee and sandwiches, because in the 1970s there was no Tim Hortons or McDonald's or anything like that. So she wanted to have spend more time with us because we were just kids at the time. So she actually became the first female dispatcher so that she could have weekends off. And then she was also rose to management, to be the first female in a management position at ETS. So she was there for, I think, 27 years. I lost her to cancer in 2013, and I never wanted to be a bus driver. I have to tell you guys, I never wanted to be a bus driver. My career was in broadcasting. I wanted to do broadcasting. And, but I knew, because mom was always right. When I came to Canada after living in the Cayman Islands for 7 years, I knew that my career was obsolete in the broadcasting industry and that maybe I should become a bus driver. So I followed in her footsteps, and 5 years later, I became a transit instructor. And when I did lose her from cancer in 2013, I knew that they were building a new division, a new ETS division to replace Westwood, because Westwood division was very old and there was no use fixing it. They were going to build a brand new $210 million division. So it was quite interesting because one of my male colleagues, another transit instructor, came over to my house. And I just recently lost her, and said, Lisa, I have a great idea. And I'm like, okay, I need to hear some good news. What's the idea? And he said, why don't we put a plaque of mom in each garage so that no one forgets about her? And I'm like, that's a great idea. And I started to think about it. I'm like, well, how big's the plaque going to be to get the new garage named after her? And they told me, well, you need to garner as much political support as you can. So that's what I did. I just sat down and started sending out a flurry of letters. Alberta Labour History Institute, my union. I went to the mayor, I went to councillors, I went to as many politicians as I could. Took me about 9 months, and on Christmas Eve, I probably received the best, I would say, Christmas present in my life when they sent me the email saying it was official that they named the new garage after Kathleen Andrews. So that was her story. So and to this day, it's a great motivation, I would say, for all women, just more female transit operators, and it's never be forgotten. So, and I just want to say thank you to ALHI. Thank you. And that's it. So back to you, Andrea.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And there's some great sections on the website that highlight some of that work and the honoring that has been able to happen for Kathleen as well. So those are our speakers for the evening. Please stick around for a few minutes. I'm going to give you a little something else. So first, thank you very much to all of our speakers. You've been able to share such wonderful stories with us and really to show the breadth of what women's work in Alberta can mean and some of the lessons that we can take from that to keep making greater strides ahead. We are going to have an opportunity now to take a look through the website just to have a peek at some of the other things you can look at and other ways you can enjoy the material. I'm going to take about 5 minutes to do that, and then I'm going to come back and I will happily get ready to take questions or remarks for any of our wonderful contributors. Being mindful of time, we'll make sure not to keep you too long, but I think the resources we have available on the website are definitely worth checking out, and hopefully you'll be able to take a look on your own time as well. So I am going to share my screen now. Here we go. So here we are at the albertalaborhistory.org website. This is our main web page, and we have had a lot of new contributions, new themes, and lots of wonderful material. Our website team has been very, very active in making more of this even more accessible. So, as you can see, our landing page is spotlighting a lot of the material we have available for Women and Work right now. So we have some of our archival footage, some of the various stories. We've got some interesting links to different resources that you can connect with that. And then we also have some sub-themes and components that you can take a look at related to what our speakers have been able to speak about tonight, as well as other different organizations, other lines of work, and other experiences. If you are interested in hearing more from our speakers directly, I'm going to invite you to take a look at our interviews index. And this is a link to every one of our contributors with a transcript and a short video extract of their contributions. This is the complete list, but as you can see, our specific, there's Angela, we have Angela Fiddler there too. And you can see that all of our contributors are here, including this evening. So there are a few different ways to get to their material, but the index will always get you that there. There's Karen. There's our original interview with Kathleen herself. So those are some places that you can go to actually see the material. I'm going to click on Karen's because it's close to me, just so that you can see what that looks like. So we click on Karen, and we can see we've got a profile with a photo, some background information, some keywords, the transcript of the interview, and a clip from that. So each of our speakers tonight has a page like this available for them, and you can certainly visit it and get a more in-depth look at their stories. Now we're here tonight to look at the different themes available through the website, and these are groupings of some of our interviews with some background information and links to other resources. So I'm going to highlight right now the women in the skilled trades, which is what we've been looking at. Oh, there's Siobhan on her ropes. And we've got some great information here. We've got a set of interviews curated. So again, many of our contributors tonight are reflected here. There's Siobhan. And that's very handy. And we also have a nice video about Build Together, which is an introduction to the organization and the project. So this is, again, a background video and some more information. I'm not going to click play on that right now because the technology might melt down everyone's computers. But I certainly encourage you to take a look through this stuff when you have a chance. Another theme that I'd like to highlight too related to women and work is the Moving Forward project. So this was an earlier project that ALHI has done with women's work. And it is again looking at a specific set of interviews. So we have another index of women specifically. Then we have specific profiles with some highlighted people, including Kathleen Andrews, Women in the Skilled Trade, Women's Futures, all available for you there. We are continuing to add material to the website regularly, and we will be adding more videos. We will be adding more information and more themes as we continue our work. So please check in frequently, and if there's something you'd like to see or something that you think is missing, please do not hesitate to contact us and let us know if there's something more to highlight. I will put our contact information up again in a moment. We do want to thank as well the Build Together group, who really collaborated closely with ALHI in organizing many of these interviews, as well as participating as interviewers themselves. So the interviews in this theme do comprise the highlights that we've seen, but there's a real focus on women in the skilled trades, journey person welders, electricians, pipe fitting, insulating, virtually any kind of work you can think of, we have women represented doing it. And in line with what Linda and Angela Fiddler were speaking about as well, we have an Indigenous labor history project that also might be of interest to many of you. So we have some more specific interviews. We've got specific areas of work and work sites, a really incredible documentary about the construction of the CN Tower. Genuinely, you can spend all day looking through here and not get tired of what you're seeing. It is incredibly inspiring collection and has a lot of richness to it. What I enjoy the most about this collection are the opportunities to hear from people themselves, not just to read their own words as they've shared them, but to actually watch people tell their stories. As we've had a chance to see tonight, having women speak about their lives conveys something that simply reading it on the page does not. You know, there is a lot of strength to be found, even if we feel like being crybabies, even if we feel tense and stressed and carrying that with us. But being able to watch women talk about their experiences, I think, is incredibly empowering and very worthwhile to take a look. So I am going to invite you all to spend some time, perhaps after this event, clicking around, having a look, see what we have. But before we get too late into the evening, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to see if we have any questions. I see Christina's had her hand up for a little while. So if anyone is interested in asking a question, they can certainly come on camera or type it into the chat if you're more comfortable. But Christine, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so very much to everybody involved tonight, from the people who conceptualized this event to the ones who put it together, and obviously to all the speakers and the sisters who we all got the privilege to listen to tonight. Thank you. It's been amazing to spend my Friday night with you. I have a question for Angela Fiddler. And I'm not going to lie to anybody here. You know, I have a little bit of, bias when it comes to Angela. I'm a UFCW member and representative. And so, I've seen Angela around and I know of some of her work. And so, Angela, I have a question for you. Listening to you talk about, how hard it was, especially when you started out. And I loved I laughed out loud when you said, I'm a crier. Me too. Solidarity. I wear my anger and my love and my laughter and my heart on my sleeve. So I imagine that you would draw on those experiences early on when you were coming into such a strange environment and such a difficult environment and an incredibly racist and biased environment. So I would imagine that you draw on those experiences today to help other people. And so what might I hear from you if I was coming into Wapasu Creek camp and I was struggling with issues similar to what you were and being made to feel marginalized and worthless? What might I hear from you based on all the experiences that you've experienced?
Well, I usually, I would probably take you aside and talk to you about what issues you were going through there at work and trying to figure out a way how to solve them. if it was just the support you needed for being like a mother away from your children, and then working that through and helping her come to build a time where she's able to FaceTime her children or to check in, anything like that, and just basically that encouragement, because when you're away from your family for 20 days at a time, it's really hard. And
Just
so
to stay connected.
So you
The
need
importance of staying connected. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, as exactly. And
Yeah.
then just to you're always having to encourage your coworkers at camp, because it's really hard to be so far away. So I think the number one thing that we need to focus on is encouraging one another and understanding where they're coming from. And then from there, once someone's able to open up to you and to trust you, you're able to direct them to the right person. If you don't have maybe the knowledge to help them out, you're able to refer them to another person that you know can help them further along that way. For Indigenous rights, it's sort of the same thing. Like I would, if needed, I would get in touch with an elder in that area, or make arrangements for that elder to come in, and just different things like that, or for someone to speak with them that completely understood if I didn't have the knowledge to help them out that way. But yeah, so it's always the motherly instinct, I guess, of being a worker so far away. And you're bringing that into your workforce, right? Into your wherever you are. And then you're able to just help your other coworkers.
Thank you so much, Angela.
Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. I've got another hand up. Renee, do you want to speak on mic, or do you want to type a question into the chat? Oh, your mic is muted, so I can't hear your response. But Renee, if you want to ask a question.
Sorry about that. No, actually, I wanted to make a comment as to how proud I am to be a part of this tonight. I was, as a kid of 5 years old from northern Saskatchewan, adopted into an Indigenous family where I became the youngest of 11. My father was plant manager at Canada Packers, and he was from an era where women did not go out into the workforce. He would have rolled over in his grave listening to this tonight. And having been a part of the women in the labor movement, I am just so very, very proud to hear what these ladies have to say, because it is so, so important that we speak up for all women all the way through, and that we stand up for our rights and continue to stand up for our rights. Thank you.
Well said, Renee. And that's what we're trying to do here tonight, is give an opportunity to really not only highlight incredible contributors to the work, but to show that this is happening every day, and that when we talk to each other, when we talk about our struggles and our work and our hopes and our accomplishments, it is so deeply inspiring to know that the work you're doing comes with all of these sisters behind you. And so I really appreciate your comments there. Is there anyone else who wants to have one or two of the last words before we end our evening? This is where I pause and stare at the camera to see. All right. Well, I would like to then thank everyone who was able to come out tonight. This is being recorded, so it should be available on the ALHI website fairly shortly, so you can check back in, you can watch it again, you can share links to others who might be interested. I am just going to put our contact email into the chat. We would love to hear from you. If you thought there were other things you'd like to see, if you'd like to take part in a future session like this, or either to contribute as a person with a story to tell, an interview, if you want to make some connections, we are here for all of it. So you can get us at alhieeducation@gmail.com. That's right there in the chat. So the same link that you got the information from today, you can use to correspond with us again. And so as we wrap up, as the chat is saying, it is not ever the last word. It is merely a pause in a conversation and a struggle that will continue. So thank you to our attendees. Thank you so much to our speakers for bravely getting in front of the camera tonight and speaking again. So thank you to Siobhan, Linda, Angela.
Andrea, could you just share our website, please?
Absolutely. And you can get all of this good stuff and more on our website. I've just put the link there. We managed to score albertalaborhistory.org, so we are the authority. And I want to thank as well everyone who worked very hard to put this together. The ALHI website committee just did a fabulous job organizing, really working to engage people and to make sure this was a wonderful, wonderful, exciting event. So we are hoping to do more of these in the future, so stay tuned. But for now, thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.